So for this episode of Experimental Typography, we're going to be doing some experiments with water. The tried and true H2O. So like usual, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple experiments, then we're going to kind of see the results of that, and then once we do that, I'll take one of the results from the experiments and turn it into a design. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alrighty, so I'm all set up. I got all of the supplies that I think I'm going to need for these kind of experiments. So we're ready to get started. So we'll do the very first one, which I thought would be interesting to see if I could get some kind of like ink smears. If I were to put water on it and just kind of push the water around, see if maybe I could smear the ink and get some interesting effects. So we'll start with that. If that doesn't quite work, I want to try it with Sharpie to see if maybe that help kind of exacerbate the ink. And then if that also doesn't work, I have some tape that I can put over it, and maybe that'll make it a bit more extreme. So let's see what happens. So I've just got some water over here. I'm just gonna dip my fingers in it. Yeah, it does. It does smear. There is that. I'm gonna try going just one way. I'm pulling everything. This is all right. I don't know how much of the ink is actually kind of smearing and how much of this is just from the water. Kind of hard to tell. Sorry, I just checked my camera and I saw it was a little bit wide, so I just zoomed in a little bit more. But as you can kind of see, I don't think it's really smearing the ink around that much. I'm gonna let it dry. Maybe the results will be a little bit different, but it doesn't seem to have really worked. So I'm gonna set that off to the side here. Austin from the future here. I just found out that I just did a couple of the experiments with my overhead shot, and almost everything was out of focus. So I don't know what I'm gonna do, but you'll find out whenever I play it or whenever you've seen it. I don't really know. All I know is that this camera failed me and I'm pretty frustrated, and it really sucks because I just spent the last 10 minutes doing something that I can't really just make up on the spot again. I mean, I could, but I'd have to fake it and it wouldn't be realistic. So, enjoy whatever I come up with to fill that spot. So just to recap what was in the last section that was out of focus, or might have been out of focus. So the first one that we started off with was this one. So it's kind of dried a little bit, so you can kind of see kind of how it's ended up. But really, I just put some water on it, tried to smear the ink from the print just to see what kind of effects we could get, which really didn't do too much just because the ink was really in the paper, so nothing too crazy. And then next, we had this one where I traced over some of the letters with Sharpie and then tried to smear that ink again, which was a little bit better, not too much crazier, too much different from the previous one, but it did do a little bit better. So then after that, I wanted to try it out with by putting tape on top of it. That way the ink would have something spread on and it wouldn't just soak into the paper, which ended up with this one. I accidentally tore it trying to peel it off, which it was a little bit different from how it looks now, because now the water has gotten underneath and soaked through. Before it hadn't really. I had traced over everything and tried to wipe it off, but the Sharpie ink had already set in, so I really couldn't push it around and move it around. Although I did want to try to just kind of put some droplets of water on just to see like that kind of distortion, which was something that I took pictures of, which I can show you right now what that looked like. But yeah, I mean, this is also kind of interesting, but not really what I was going for, at least not at the time. Maybe I'll take another picture of what this looks like and use it. I don't know. So anyways, that's where we left off. So now that we're all caught up and hopefully we won't have any more issues, let's move on to the next one. So I'm gonna need this big old container. Alrighty, so what I wanted to try to do was, I'll have to do this once or twice. What I wanted to do was crumple this up and then dump it in and then pull it out and see if maybe, different parts of it aren't affected by the water or some of it is, or maybe the ink will bleed off in a cool and unique way. Not really sure. I just kind of have this idea. Literally a couple minutes before I started filming. So I haven't even really thought it through, but we're gonna find out. So I'm gonna kind of just crumple this up randomly. I'm actually just gonna quickly dump it in. We'll see what happens. I'm actually gonna kind of squish it together and then carefully unfold it. Well, that definitely had an effect. Good Lord. I was not expecting to get so much ink. Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. I honestly thought that this was not gonna amount to anything, but all of the ink really spread, and it just kind of, you can even see like all the creases and stuff, which is interesting. That's pretty cool. Interesting, okay. So I wanna try that one more time. I'm gonna set that over here to dry, but this time I want to, I'm gonna soak this in the water first and then crumple it. So we're gonna do kind of the opposite way. So we'll soak it first and then we'll kind of crumple it up. Okay, so very similar to the last one, but just a little bit less ink bleed. That's pretty interesting. It's kind of cool. You can get all those kind of cracks and stuff. Not what I was expecting, but that's what these videos are for. So the last thing that I wanted to try, which I think is going to be pretty fun. So I'm going to take one of these. Take one of these. We're going to dump it in. Oh, hello, Ruby. Yeah. Take your time. Although this is always cool. It's just having it sit in the water, you can just see the ink is starting to bleed. I'm going to take this oil, now what I've got, and I'm gonna see if we can kind of get some interesting displacement going on with the oil, because the oil should just sit on top of the water, and I'm hoping it'll create some kind of interesting effect, but I'm not too sure, so let's find out. Okay, I don't know how well you can see that. I'm gonna try to zoom in. A little bit hard to see, but you can kind of see it kind of here with some of the bigger bubbles where it's kind of displacing everything. So this actually could be kind of cool. I'm gonna pour in some more and see what happens. You definitely be able to see it now. Now that's pretty interesting. I like that. It's kind of hard to tell because I'm looking at it like upside down on the screen, but from what I can see, it does look pretty cool. What I'm gonna do whenever I take pictures, just because like there's one like really big one right here, I'm gonna see if I can kind of move them around and get some different types, because I do think it's cool, but I don't necessarily just want to have like one in the middle and that's all we got. I think that's a little bit boring, but maybe we can kind of, jazz it up just a little bit. So I'm gonna take a couple different variations of this. Like I said, I'll take some of the other pictures that I've got, and then we'll just kind of start designing and see what happens. So I knew that I wanted to use one of these two variations on the oil experiment. So I just dropped both of those in, and I figured I would kind of decide which one I wanted to use whenever I started bringing in the photography and the pictures and kind of figuring out what the concept was and what I wanted the final design to look like. So I just went through and I just cleaned up everything and got it ready for the photography. I found this picture of this woman just under the surface of the water, and I thought it'd be cool if I overlaid the type. It almost looked like the type was floating right above her. I thought that would be a good way to bring in that kind of water aspect into the design and make it feel like the type was actually there. At first, I really liked having the type in the bottom right, but I felt like it was a little bit too disjointed from everything else. So I moved to the middle. That way it would feel a little bit more cohesive with everything else, but it would still also kind of play into the type feeling like it's actually in the water. And then to top it off, I added in a gradient just to make it feel a little bit more intentionally designed. But that was it for the first design, but I actually had more ideas, so I just kind of kept going. I downloaded this picture and I thought it would go perfectly with the other variation of the typography that I had. So I pretty much just went through the same process of dropping in the photo, kind of moving around the type, figuring that out exactly where I wanted it, and then playing around with the gradient to get the effect that I wanted. Neither of these designs were very involved in terms of having a bunch of editing or having to do a lot of stuff with a bunch of layers or anything like that. So even though the designs are simple, I think they came out really well. I think it's very easy to over-design at times, so I felt like this was one of the times where I just needed to not go with my gut instinct and try to add a bunch of stuff that isn't necessary and just keep it to the minimum. Now for the third design, I wanted to use one of the other experiments that I had done. I really liked how the crumpled paper one came out. I just really like how the ink looks on the paper. It really looks like liquid, like the ink just came out and started flowing on top of the paper. I initially started with trying to overlay the typography with some water to make it feel like it was like floating on top of the water, similar to kind of how I did it with some of the other ones, but it just didn't look quite right. Like I said, it feels like the ink is like actually flowing, so I don't think it makes sense to have it sitting on top of the water. So my next thought was to make it look like it was on top of a table, like, you know, you had just spilt a drink or something. Well, I couldn't find a picture of spilt water. I did find this cool image of this kind of coffee scene, I guess. And I thought it would make a cool scene to make it look like, you know, they had just spilt coffee or something like that. And it's also cool because it's different from the other designs, since the other designs were focused on, you know, more water, and this is kind of focused on coffee, so it's kind of got a different look and feel. But this one was also pretty simple. All I really had to do was just kind of warp the perspective so it felt like it was like actually on the table with the rest of the items, and then just doing a little bit of masking so it looked like it was actually, you know, underneath some of the coffee beans, so that way it felt more a part of the piece rather than being a added element. But really, that was it for this third design. So here are the final products. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with these came out. Like normal, I wasn't really sure how these were going to turn out or what we were going to get in the end, but honestly, these came out pretty cool. I think my favorite experiment was the putting the oil in the water. It's just so simple and so fun to just kind of play around with all the different variables. You know, you can play around with how much oil you're using, or, you know, you can get a spoon or something, you can kind of stir it up, and you can quickly just get different looks. So it's really easy to just kind of take a bunch of photos really quickly and get a bunch of different looks and variations, and then you just have a lot of options. And that's really cool because then you can find one that really matches the look that you're going for. But I was also really surprised with the crumpled paper one. I honestly thought it was going to be a throwaway experiment. I just did it just so I could put it in the video and just say that I tried it. Seeing the ink bleed that way and how it interacted with the different folds in the paper was really cool. I didn't think the ink would bleed that much, and also the folds in the paper kind of give this watery kind of look. You know, when you're looking at a pool and you can kind of see the waves at the bottom, like that kind of like light texture, that's kind of what it looks like. So in a way, it kind of plays into that water theme that I wasn't really expecting it to. Out of the three, I think the second one is my favorite, followed by the first one and then the third one. But let me know what you guys think. Which one was your favorite, or should I have done something different or tried something else? And there was also something else that I wanted to bring up to you guys. So I had an idea where I would let you guys have the results of the experiments so you can make your own designs with them. Honestly, I think it'd be cool to see everyone's unique twist on these designs and see what everyone can come up with. But I also thought it would be cool if you would send me those designs. That way I can make a video showcasing the designs from everybody in the community. I have a lot of fun making these designs, and I think it'd be really cool for everyone else to have that same experience. You know, everyone's gonna have a different perspective on things and have a unique look. So I think it'd be cool to just to kind of see how everyone can have their own twist on something. But let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in something like that. But really, that's all I have for today. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you would check out the rest of my channel and then consider subscribing. I hope to see you in the next video. Ruby, can you please move? Come on.